السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. Right, you guys all here. Inshallah, we'll start in 2 minutes. Astaghfirullah wa atubu ilayk. Allahumma Bismillah, I think we can start. 1 second. Close. Right. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We carry on with Kitab al-Zakah. Yesterday, we started off with the conditions of zakah. Those conditions, if a person fulfills them or if we find them present, then a person, it's compulsory upon them to pay their zakah. I'm going to ask you, yesterday we mentioned how many conditions, Naeem?
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, Sheikh. From my understanding, there are 5 conditions and 2 extra if you're following the Hanafi tradition.
Wait, give me one.
So 1, you have to be a Muslim.
A Muslim. So we said that zakah, compulsory charity, is obligatory or compulsory upon Muslims. So if there's non-Muslims living, for example, in a Muslim country, they are not obliged to pay zakah. Second condition, Umar from India.
You must Hurriya.
Hurriya. We said that, yes. So in those days, there was slavery, and we said that there was no compulsory charity on what a slave earned because he didn't own anything. And as we mentioned, there's no slavery today. Hurriya wa Islam. Alam Gheer, number 3. Third condition.
The third condition is the holding for 1 year.
Before that, holding what for 1 year?
Nisab is the third.
Nisab. So we said that you have to reach a certain threshold when it comes to your wealth. And obviously this threshold differs. So when it comes to gold and silver, paper money, it's different to, for example, a person holding livestock. So if you have $10 in your pocket and you only own $10, at the end of the year, you don't have to pay zakah on that because it doesn't reach nisab. Alam Gheer, tell me the next one also, because they all joint. We said must have nisab and then
full ownership, holding for 1 year.
Full ownership and holding for 1 year. So that comes to 5. ملك نصاب واستقراره ومضي الحول. طيب. We said that there's certain items or certain things which there's no full ownership of it. And we said that they give an example of a slave who is trying to buy his freedom. That's mentioned in the books. Also, we can find, for example, a waqf. And I gave you the example of a building where a person says that this building is waqf. He gives it out for rentals. Whatever money comes, he's going to give it to an orphanage. At the end of the year, let's say they get 100 million. We say that there's no zakah on that 100 million because the person who made it a waqf in the first place, the waqif, he doesn't own it. The orphans don't own that money because they haven't yet received it. So there's no full ownership there. I would have said also a masjid, since a masjid is waqf, but there's no monetary transactions there. Also, we said وَمُضِيُّ الْحَوْلِ. A year should pass. So for example, if you earn, somebody gave you $1 million today, and tomorrow you went to buy a car and you bought a house, and example, you went on holiday, etc. And then you left with what's less than nisab at the end of the year, or within, let's say, 3 days, you spent all that money. here you don't have to pay any zakah on it because you held nisab. Yes, you owned it fully, but you didn't hold it for a year. And we said the Hanafi madhab, they look at the beginning and end of the year. So let's say, for example, the threshold of nisab is 10,000. You have 10,000 in Ramadan. They don't look at the fact that you may have gone down to 1,000 or 100 and become broke. And then by next year, Ramadan, you got back to 10,000 and that's nisab. They'll tell you, we just look at these two, beginning of the year, end of the year, you had nisab, you pay zakah. We also said the Hanafi madhab add another 2 extra conditions, and that is al-bulugh wal-aql. Bulugh is for a person to reach the age of puberty. Hence, they do not believe, or they say that there is no zakah when it comes to the wealth of a child. And we mentioned how a child may own. For example, their parents were wealthy and they passed away. The child is left with a lot of inheritance. In the Hanafi madhab, there's no zakah on that child's wealth. And also, if a person had to lose his mind, they become insane, mentally ill, etc., and they had wealth before, then there's no zakah on that wealth according to the Hanafi madhab. Inshallah, today we'll take a few more masail with regards to these conditions. So we find, for example, we've taken 7 conditions. Under each condition, there's smaller and smaller and smaller masail. There's 2 or 3 I want to touch on today. The first is when it comes to what's called zakatud dayn, paying zakah on a debt. Now you've got to remember, when it comes to borrowing and lending money, either you've borrowed from somebody, so you've taken 100,000 from somebody, or you could be somebody who is lending money. So let's say you've got a big business man or somebody who is very wealthy and they lend money to others. It could be a short-term loan, it could be a long-term loan, etc. So always differentiate between these two. You've either got somebody who is taking on debt, or you've got somebody who is lending or giving out loans. Here we're talking about the first group or the first category where somebody is going into debt. So for example, let's say someone's starting off a business and they need a loan of 100,000. So they go to somebody and this person gives them $100,000. What are we talking about? We're talking about zakatud dayn. Does this person have to pay zakah even though they've got a debt? So let's say, for example, you take a loan for 100,000, and at the end of the year, you count your assets, you count what you've got, you count your cash in the bank, etc., and you've got 100,000, but you know that you also owe 100,000. Okay. So you have 100,000 with you, but you owe 100,000 to somebody else. Here, according to the Hanafi madhab, they will say that this debt is between yourself and the people. Hence, it's more befitting for you to pay. You're supposed to pay that debt, so you don't pay zakah on it. So did you guys understand? For example, let's say a person goes into debt. Let's say they have 200,000 cash in their account, but they owing somebody 1 million at the end of the year. Here they wouldn't pay zakah because they are $800,000 underground in the red, minus. However, let's say, for example, a person takes on debt, and at the end of the year, after they count up in their business, the money, gold, silver, stock, and they find that the amount, even after subtracting the debt, is more than nisab. So let's say, for example, round figure, let's say nisab is $10,000, example. And this person has a debt of 20,000, and at the end of the year, they count all their money and they've got 100,000. Okay. So have they reached nisab? Yes. Is 100,000 more than 10,000? Yes. So they have to pay zakah. Do they pay zakah on all of that 100,000? The answer is no, because the 20,000 they owing, it actually belongs to somebody else. So after taking out that debt, that's why they say zakkal fadil, which means he gives zakah of that which is remaining on condition that it's more than nisab. So I hope you understood this. In a nutshell, when it comes to, I told you, the first category, paying zakah for a person who's taken on debt. You look at what you've got at the end of the year, you subtract your debts, if what you're remaining with is less than nisab, you don't have to pay zakah. And if it's more than nisab, you will pay zakah. There's one mas'ala that I looked for. I didn't really find it. If any of you find it in a Hanafi book, and I'm talking about the olden books, I'm not talking about the newer books. If any of you find it, please tell me. And that's if you find somebody taking on a long-term loan. When I'm talking about long-term, I'm talking about 10 years, 20 years. Should they pay zakah on that or not? I know there's a lot of scholars who've spoken about it today. If any of you find it in the Hanafi madhab, specifically mentioned in one of the books, please tell me. So that's when it comes to zakatul dain. Second mas'ala I want to take for today, and Sheikh Ibrahim had asked, he said, along the lines of, is there certain wealth that is excluded, or there's an exception to it when it comes to paying zakah? And the answer is yes. So zakah, you don't have to pay it on all your wealth. There's certain things that when you're counting your wealth at the end of the year, you don't count them towards your zakah. So for example, let's say you own a house worth $1 million and you own a car worth $100,000, and you in your business you own machinery, for example, worth $1 million. Here you don't pay zakah on that. As the hadith of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, there's no zakah on a person's horse and his servant. In those days they had slaves, so a person doesn't have to pay zakah when it comes to his whatever he's using, and that would entail your house, and it would entail your car, your mode of transport. Now let's say somebody is buying houses to buy, they're buying houses in order to trade. So you find people flipping houses. They buy a house and sell it, and buy a house and sell it, and buy a house and sell it, or they're buying cars in order to sell. Here we would say that the intention is different. So this person has gone into buying cars and houses in order to profit and buy and sell, whereas the first person, he's just collecting, he's using it. And at times you might find that a person may have 2 or 3 or 4 houses. Sometimes there may be people living in those houses, their family, etc. And sometimes they may put them on rent. So if the house is worth, for example, $100,000, and he's just bought the house, he has no intention of buying, selling, flipping, etc. He's bought a house worth $100,000. He won't pay zakah on 100,000. Let's say he put it for rent and he's collecting rental money every month, $1,000. Here on that rental money, because that's part of his business, as long as the conditions are fulfilled where it's more than nisab, he holds it for a year, etc., then he'll pay zakah on that. So to answer your question, yes, there are certain things that zakah is not compulsory on, and one of those things are things you use for your personal use, or things you may need in your business that are not part of the actual buying and selling. So for example, when you fit out your shop, I don't know who's from my country, Naeem would know, that when somebody goes to fit out their shop or their warehouse and they spend so much money on the displays and the flooring and the lighting and yes, in your accounts books, you call them assets and fixed assets. But when you're talking about zakah, you're not going to look at this and pay zakah on it. You're only going to pay on what you're trading. So that's the second mas'ala I wanted to touch on. Also, what's related to this mas'ala is the scholars mentioned that the different types of wealth that zakah is compulsory upon. In short, or in order to summarize, we said that a person who has livestock, and obviously there's conditions and we'll take them, but you're looking at your camels, goats, and cows. There's conditions for that. Whoever owns so many, there's zakah on that. So that's your first condition. You're talking about livestock, or the first category. Second category is gold and silver, and we would add paper money into there, as well as stock. Some people count stock as a separate category. We'll just put it together. So a person who has money, who has wealth, who's got a bank balance, and who's holding stock in their business in order to buy and sell. It could be physical goods. It could be, as we mentioned, somebody buying and selling houses, things that don't move. Here you would look at its value and pay zakah on that according to the conditions. So that's the second type of wealth you would pay zakah on. The third is if a person is farming. And again, there's a lot of difference of opinion. We'll first take the Hanafi madhab and then the other madhahib. But generally, your foodstuffs, your grain, etc., you pay zakah on it. And also this zakah, how much you pay differs according to whether you're just surviving or your crops are surviving on what they call rainwater or natural water. Is it rainwater or dam water? Or have you made the effort, for example, to dig a borehole and extract the water? Here you would pay a slightly different amount. As for things, for example, they mentioned jewelry or precious gems, etc., that come from, I'm not talking about jewelry in terms of gold and silver. No, I'm talking about, let's say, precious stones that come from the sea. So you've got your pearls and other stones that people may hold in high value. Here, a lot of people say there's no zakah on those. So I hope I answered your question there. And the last mas'ala I want to touch on for today, and inshallah tomorrow we'll take a few more, is when it comes to paying your zakah, and this you'll find it in almost all the Hanafi books as well as the other books, they speak about the importance of niyyah, the importance of intention, that a person pays his zakah and he must have the intention of paying zakah. First time you hear this mas'ala, you might think, okay, strange. Surely if a person is paying their zakah, then they would have the niyyah. They go into detail and they mention that when a person wants to pay the zakah, he has that intention to pay. He has the intention to pay it. Or let's say he's just given it and he makes that intention. Why do they say that? Because let's say you give $100 to a poor person today. You just gave him, not really, you don't have an intention for zakah. Then about 4 months later, you decide, oh, one day I gave $100 to that guy. Let me count it in my zakah. Yes, we might laugh. It's $100. Okay, it's not so much. It's not going to affect him in a way. But let's say you're talking about $100,000. You just gave it to somebody like that in order to help him, etc. And then all of a sudden, after 4 months, you decide, okay, now let me count that from my zakah. In order to close this door, they say that when it comes to this zakah, you must have the intention before you pay it or as you paying it. And they even go a step further. They say, let's say you've paid it and immediately while the guy still got it in his hand, you say, oh yeah, and that with your intention, that's my zakah. And built upon this is another mas'ala when it comes to intention is, let's say a person intends and he's given away all his wealth, okay? So let's say a person is worth 10 million. Obviously, they've got to pay zakah at the end of the year, but let's say they give it away. So they mention this mas'ala that zakah will not be compulsory upon him because at the end of the day, he's given everything he owns, nothing. So those are the few masail I mentioned today as well as yesterday. Inshallah, tomorrow there's a few more masail regarding these conditions that I want to touch on. One of them being, let's say you are owed money. So you the one lending out money. You've given somebody $1 million and you told them, pay me after 4 years or 5 years. Do you have to pay zakah on that or you don't have to pay zakah on that? Inshallah, I hope that was clear. Anybody wants to ask anything from what we've taken?
Assalamu alaikum. I have a question.
Salam.
When they say insane, what is considered insane?
What's considered insane? So let's say a person is mentally disturbed. They cannot differentiate between right and wrong. If you go to a psychiatric ward, so for example, and it happens a lot, especially you find people who at times are very wealthy and they take a big knock in business. They no longer the same people. They can't even think. They can't even move. You find people suffer from strokes, etc. Is zakah now compulsory upon this person? May Allah protect all of us. You guys are young, but you Google it, look at it. You'll find, just go to a psychiatric ward and look at how it is there. Those types of people, according to the Hanafi madhab, even if they had wealth, we won't take zakah from them. The other madhahib have a different opinion. And the Hanafi madhab are saying that this zakah is like a gharama. It's something that the person has to pay, okay? Now, this specific person, when it comes to a child, as well as when it comes to a person who's not sane, who's no longer all there, up there, they're saying that the hadith says that there's no taklif on this person, رُفِعَ الْقَلَمُ عَنْ ثَلَاثَةٍ. And two of them mentioned are a child until he reaches the age of puberty. So for example, a child is ordered, encouraged to read salah, but if he doesn't perform his salah, he's not sinful. Same when it comes to zakah, according to the Hanafi madhab, is that there's no zakah in his wealth. Same when it comes to an insane person, somebody who's not mentally well and fit. Naeem?
Sheikh, you've mentioned the threshold for nisab. Is that something that we'll discuss later, I presume?
Yes, inshallah. Why I left it for later is because how much is nisab? Is it? They then differ from before up till now. Also, when it comes to the sa', is it 85 grams of gold? Is 83 grams of gold? Is 96 grams of gold? And what's its equivalent? What's 200 dirhams? What's 200 silver coins? Then should you take the nisab of gold or silver, bearing in mind that in the world we live in today, the price of gold is so much higher, maybe 100 times higher than the price of silver. So which nisab do you take? If you had to work out the nisab in silver, your nisab will probably be around $300 US dollars. And if you had to work it out in gold, your nisab will be about $9,000. Look at that big disparity. So which one do you take? Inshallah, I'll take all that with you guys later on. Slowly, step by step. Omar has a question. Is zakah only by wealth? There is other type of zakah without by wealth. Look, generally in the Sharia, when we're speaking about zakah, we're speaking about compulsory charity. Yes, sometimes they'll tell you if you've learned knowledge, then give zakah of your knowledge, i.e., you've learned something, now go and teach that portion to other people. They'll mention that. And it's not compulsory in the sense that, okay, you learned one book, so now go and teach 4 pages of it. No, not like that. When we're talking about zakah here, we're talking about compulsory charity. Alam Gheer.
Yeah, Sheikh, my question is regarding the money invested in the property market, and knowing that the property market has gone up. Let's suppose amount was invested around 2010, £100,000, and now a person knows that this amount has gone up to the price of the property to, like, let's suppose £250,000. So during all these years, do you have to continuously pay the zakah on the money?
Well, there's a few things to your question. The first is, when they invested, did they buy shares or did they buy a property? That's number one. Did they buy shares or did 4 friends come together and buy a property? Number two, investment differs according to different people, the definition of investment. So you find that some people, for example, today they'll say the economy is going down. You've got 5 friends, each of them got 100,000. They'll say, let's invest our money. What they're trying to say is, let's park our money for a rainy day. What they do, they buy a house or property, and they're not really willing to sell right now. They're just holding on to that property. You get where I'm coming from. Whereas there's a second group of people who, that's their job, flipping and buying and selling. It's called flipping. When you take it, you do something to it, and you flip it off to somebody else. So there's a lot of nuances when it comes to your question. What did they buy it for in the first place? You would have to ask them all. Sometimes you find, like here, Naeem would know, that you find a lot of people, they look at residential properties, houses especially. The guy buys 1 house, 2 houses, 3 houses, 4 houses, 5 houses, 6 houses, not necessarily with the intention of selling, but if he gets a good deal, he'll sell. You get where I'm coming from? They're generally parking their money, no intention to sell, but if a good deal comes, they'll sell. So do you see the difference in intention? One guy, he's buying in order to do it up a little bit and sell, buying in order to do it up and sell. Here we could say that what he deals in and trades in is houses. Anybody else?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So with when it comes to like business, it's only on the profit is that zakat is on, or is like for example, you want like a jewelry store and you plan to sell $5,000 worth of jewelry. Does it go on that too, or it only goes on the one that you sell?
No, so inshallah, we'll take later on when you're counting it comes under zakatun naqdain, which is gold and silver. And then they also call zakat urud al-tijara. Urud al-tijara is, we could translate as your inventory, your stock. So let's say somebody is holding stock worth, in the warehouses today, the big plants, they may be holding stock worth $10 million, $20 million. Okay, there's zakah on that. Then they then differ. Do you pay zakah on buying price or selling price? Anyway, I was going to say personally, I lean towards a certain opinion, but anyway, some tell you that no, you pay according to your selling price, and some will say buying price. Since I mentioned it, I'll carry on. I personally lean towards the opinion that you pay zakah on your buying price. Why? If you look at some of the prices today on Alibaba or things in China, for example, you might be able to get this phone cover, for example. You're able to buy it for $1, okay? And you're able to sell it in your country for $20. So somebody buys $1 million worth of phone cases, okay? They've got $1 million worth of phone cases they've spent on that. According to selling price, it's worth $20 million. So some of the scholars will tell you, no, pay zakah on 20 million. The others will say, no, you pay zakah on 1 million. And this we're talking about, they haven't sold it yet. If they've sold it, it's a different story now. Personally, I lean towards the opinion, and it's fair that you would pay zakah on buying price, which is 1 million. Some business people do take out on selling price, and they just want to do good. You ask them, even there's quite a few, like in our community, you ask them and they say, no, it's a little bit more, we'll pay. So that's up to them. Also, when it comes to business, Sheikh Ibrahim, you've got to remember that you must also take into account your debtors, your creditors, who you owing money, who owes you money, etc. You've got to take all that into account. And inshallah, we'll take a little bit of that in detail when we get to that chapter. Right now, we're still at the beginning. Somebody asked a question here from the stream. Is it good to favor your family members during zakah? So there's certain family members you're not allowed to give zakah, as we'll take in the people of zakah. Generally, they say your usul and your furu'. Usul are your father, mother going up, grandparents, etc. Your furu' are those going down, your children, grandchildren, etc. So they say you're not allowed to give them zakah, but we'll take it in full, bi'idhnillah. And then those relatives who are deserving of zakah, and let's say you don't have to spend on them. So there's certain people, as you'll take a chapter in fiqh known as nafaqah. So there's certain people who have to spend on others. So let's say a person has to spend on somebody, it's compulsory to spend on that person. However, they don't want to spend on him, but they're giving him zakah. Here we would say, no, nafaqah is compulsory upon you, not zakah. But let's say somebody who's related to you, and zakah you're allowed to give them, you're not somebody who's obliged to spend on them. Here, it would be better to give them your zakah, since there's somebody related to you. So it becomes sadaqah as well as sila. It becomes a charity for them, and you also keeping your ties. So you've got to look at which family member. It is not all family members are deserving of zakah. Anything else before we move on to Arabic? One more question.
Over here in America, when people go into college, they get their own money to the college, like let's say 5,000. So if someone gets 5,000, do they have to pay zakat on that?
You mean the college gives them?
Usually the college asks for that money, and then they get a loan, or they sometimes they get a loan, but usually it's like when you attend a college, you have to pay that much. So they demand.
You pay it off slowly. Look, certain specific details, and I'll mention this again, I've mentioned to the brothers before. There's certain specific masail that that pertain to certain countries. So, for example, in the West, in Europe, etc., one of the biggest masail they speak about student loans and buying a house from the bank, etc. Personally, I would prefer if you ask somebody there, because they're more knowledgeable about the whole thing. As for me, who's sitting here, and others who are sitting here, we don't see that in the first place. Yes, you hear of the masail, but I don't really want to speak about something I haven't lived. So it would be better for you to ask somebody there who is more knowledgeable.
Jazakallah khair.
Amin wa iyyak. And that's something else, as you guys are learning, part of knowledge is to always understand that we all make mistakes and we don't know the answers for everything. So at times somebody might ask you, oh, you've been learning in the madrasa for so many years and you don't even know the answer for this. Yes, many times you won't know an answer. It's better for you to say Allah knows best. And this is especially if you've tried your best, you've looked through it. And also when it comes to, as I mentioned, masail pertaining certain countries, it's not fair and it's not right. If I had to go to speak about somebody or a mas'ala on the other side of the world, I've never really witnessed it properly. I've never sat with the people who've done it. So yeah, may Allah grant us beneficial knowledge and guidance. Anybody else? Nobody else? Okay, before we start this, what I will say is that there's our students, we said that 3 levels, those who cannot even read, and there's no harm, everybody will learn inshallah, but they need to be on level 1, and I haven't yet found anyone, but if there is, we'll start from level 1, where we'll teach them how to read and write the bare basics. After that, level 2, where the guys can read as well as write, but they don't really understand. So here we'll go back to book 1, and we'll try and mix between Al-Arabiyyatu Bayna Yadayk as well as the Medina books. And then level 3 are those who are generally quite fluent, and they're able to join the first batch of students who've reached book 1B, and they on the 12th module. So I'll look at your guys' answers and then we'll take it from there. Also, when it comes to different subjects, I know you guys want to learn so many subjects. At times, the actual time is short, but we do want to add tafsir, inshallah, subjects when it comes to just personal development, improvement, etc. I feel that it's extremely important, especially those who are young, those who are still in high school, college, etc. There's sciences like Mustalah al-Hadith, for example. How do you know what makes a hadith sahih? What makes a hadith hasan? What makes a hadith da'if, etc. We've got to learn that. We've got to get an idea of what's going on. So the minute you read, for example, this is sahih and this is hasan and this is hasanun sahih, what does that mean and how does a person get there? So all that slowly you will learn bi'idhnillah. Right, who's here from the students who usually read? Alam Gheer, Bismillah, start.
Sheikh, we are starting from here.
From here. This page.
Al-Hiwayatu.
Ahsant.
Hobbies.
So what Al-Hiwayat is speaking about what?
Hobbies.
Hobbies. Right. You've got Shakir and Sharif. So there's a person's name who's Shakir and a person who is Sharif. Naeem, you can be Sharif and Alam Gheer Shakir. Bismillah.
Ma hiwayatuka ya Sharifu. What is your hobby, Sharif?
Hold on. The word ya is generally used to call somebody. So like you translate it as oh. Ma hiwayatuka ya Sharif. Carry on.
هواياتي كثيرة القراءة والسفر والمرسلات وما مراسلة.
Yeah.
Okay. وما هواياتك أنت. So my hobbies are many. Reading, traveling. I'm not sure what the third one is, Sheikh.
Murasala is more like sending things, I'm sure. In those days, they used to write, yeah, correspondence. But in those days, they used to write letters. Can you see? There's the picture, Murasala. So it's like in our terms today, chatting with people.
Yeah. Okay. And okay, and I guess correspondence. And what are your hobbies?
الرياضة والرحلات.
هواياتي الرياضة.
Oh yeah. هواياتي, my hobbies. الرياضة, sports. والرحلات, maybe like
Journeys,
hiking
travel.
or
Yeah.
hiking.
Not necessarily. Rihlat. Rihla is like a journey. So rihlat is journeys, i.e. travel, etc. Yeah.
والقراءة أيضا, and reading as well.
Also, yeah, as well.
ماذا تقرأ يا شاكر? What do you like? What do you read, يا شاكر?
أقرأ الكتاب والمجلات.
Yeah, so you guys have got
yeah.
to look nicely. Look, there's a difference between
Yeah.
kutuba and kitaba.
أقرأ الكتب والمجلات الإسلامية. I read books and Islamic magazines. وماذا تقرأ أنت? And what do you read?
So Ibn Aim, I got a question for you. أقرأ الكتب. Okay, أقرأ فعلا فاعل. كتب مفعول به. What about مجلاتي?
I'm not sure, Sheikh, if I'm being honest.
Omar from India, you might know the answer.
Majlati. It's nasab. It's a detail.
Yeah, إعراب.
Okay. I'm not sure, Sheikh.
Not sure. علم غير.
Yeah. Because of wow and lam.
You close.
I know. Wow is a harf of jar, and that's the majroor. That's why it's
No. أقرأ الكتب. This wow is not for jar, huh? أقرأ الكتب. فعل فاعل كتب مفعول به منصوب. Wow is حرف عطف here, using it to join. مجلاتي is supposed to be مجلاته, but جمع مؤنث سالم. I haven't taught you this yet. جمع مؤنث سالم is a feminine letter that a feminine word, when you make it plural, this noun, it ends off with an alif and a ta. So when it ends off with an alif and a ta, when it's marfu', it takes dhamma. So for example, was-samawatu. However, when it's mansub or majroor, it has a kasra. So you won't find majallata. Okay. So it's like you're saying أقرأ الكتب وأقرأ المجلات. Why majallati? Because alif and ta, جمع مؤنث سالم. طيب, carry on.
أقرأ الكتب كتب الإسلامية والمجلات العلمية. I read books, Islamic books, and worldly knowledge, or
yeah, علمية is generally referring to academic, yes.
Okay.
Academic magazines, etc., papers. Carry on.
هل لديك مكتبة? Do you have a library?
نعم لدي مكتبة كبيرة. Yes, I have a big library.
كم ساعة تقرأ في اليوم? How many hours do you read in a day?
أقرأ 3 ساعات تقريبا. I read approximately 3 hours.
أنا أقرأ 4 ساعات في اليوم. I read about 4 hours a day.
Yeah, he said 4 hours a day. طيب.
القراءة هواية مفيدة. Reading is a beneficial hobby.
Ahsan. Well done. طيب, let's see. Omar from India. Read these, and this is the vocab. They're trying to teach you the vocabulary. Okay? So read and give me the answer in English. Translate.
Hiwayat.
Hiwaya, huh? So look, there's a difference. Hiwayatun is singular. Hiwayatun is plural. Kitabun, singular. Kutubun. So you guys have got to differentiate between what's singular and what's plural.
Hiwaya is hobby.
Sant.
Kutubun, meaning books. Majalat.
Majallatun. Ahsan.
Majallatun. Magazines. Kutub al-Islamiyya, Islamic books.
Wait, hold on a second. What's written here?
Al-Bari.
Yeah, first part. Fathul Bari. طيب.
Fathul Bari.
Fathul Bari is what? General knowledge.
I don't know.
Anyone? Fathul Bari is which book?
Collection of hadith.
Yeah, written by who and what did he write? Okay, so I'll tell you. You know the famous books of hadith? What are they? Number one?
Sahih al-Bukhari.
Sahih al-Bukhari. Okay. Ibn Hajar, rahimahullah, you must have heard the name Ibn Hajar. He wrote an explanation of Sahih al-Bukhari, and he named it Fathul Bari. Fathul Bari, Sharh Sahih al-Bukhari. Also, Ibn Rajab, the Hanbali scholar, had an explanation of Sahih al-Bukhari. He also called it Fathul Bari. However, there's only a few volumes that reached us till now. So not all of them. As for Ibn Hajar's Fathul Bari, it's in many, many volumes. And for those who are able to read it, inshallah, you'll find a lot of benefit, because he explains the ahadith that Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah mentions, and he gives you so many different fawaid in terms of fiqhi fawaid, linguistic fawaid, speaking about the actual people. So as you know, in hadith, you've got a chain of narrators, etc. And Ibn Hajar rahimahullah was a great scholar, Shafi'i scholar, great scholar. He died roughly in the year 852, I think, if I'm not mistaken, 800 and something. You can check it. I'm sure it's 852. And one of his books is Bulugh al-Maram. Bulugh al-Maram is a small, what they call a matan, text meant for memorizing. He gathered in it what are called ahadith al-ahkam. Ahadith al-ahkam are those hadith that are speaking about a hukum, i.e. is a fiqhi ruling. And obviously, because he was Shafi'i, he gathered them on in order of the Shafi'i abwab, the Shafi'i chapters. For those who are able to memorize that, inshallah, you'll get a lot of benefit. Memorize as well as learn it. And he mentioned the takhrij of the hadith. Takhrij means this hadith is recorded where? أخرجه البخاري, أخرجه النسائي, for example. Okay, and the second famous book in hadith is what?
Sahih al-Muslim.
Sahih Muslim. Who got the famous explanation of Sahih Muslim? Anyone? An-Nawawi. An-Nawawi, rahimahullah, author of Riyadh al-Salihin. Again, great Shafi'i scholar. He has one of the most famous. In fact, his explanation of Sahih Muslim is the most famous. Sharh al-Nawawi ala Sahih Muslim is called Al-Minhaj. طيب, carry on. Sorry for digressing, but that's of benefit to you. طيب, whilst we're here, we might as well ask you, the most famous book in tafsir?
Ibn Kathir.
I didn't hear you.
Was that Ibn Kathir?
Ibn Kathir came later. Yeah, okay, in terms of famous, yes, his book, you could say today is the most famous, but who's considered the imam of the Mufassirin, somebody who wrote down his tafsir, and everybody who wrote after him benefits from him. He lived in roughly
Imam
the year...
Qurtubi?
No, Qurtubi lived in 600 something. Ibn Jarir al-Tabari. That's why whenever you hear tafsir al-Tabari, that's why Ibn Kathir, when he was writing his tafsir, he didn't write anything except that he went to At-Tabari. At-Tabari is known as the Imam al-Mufassirin, the Imam of the scholars of tafsir. And if you go through his tafsir, you'll find that there's nothing except that he explains it, mashallah, and he'll tell you that, for example, he gives you an opinion what this word means, and then he gives you all the different people who said it with his sanad, and then he gives you a second opinion what this word means. I mean, same word, and then he gives you second opinion, third opinion. Then he generally chooses his opinion. وَبِنَحْوِ الَّذِي قُلْنَا فِي قَالَ أَهْلُ التَّفْسِيرِ. That's generally his statement. So, and similar to what we've said, i.e. the author, the other ulama of tafsir said, a very interesting book. And generally, if you read between At-Tabari, Al-Qurtubi and Ibn Kathir, generally those three, bi'idhnillah, you're guaranteed to understand. So in case you don't understand Tabari, Al-Qurtubi got you covered, and in case not, or you want the gist of it, Ibn Kathir. Ibn Kathir is more summarized, but he also chooses, well, he also has his own opinions or own preferences where he says, okay, this is the more correct opinion. And it's an extremely important book to read. Carry on. Kutubun ilmiya.
Kutubun ilmiya, knowledgeable books. Riyada. Riyada means, I don't know the meaning, but from the photo I can guess it's swimming or something.
No, sport. Yeah, sport. Sibaha.
Qira'ah. Okay. Qira'ah means reading. As-safar means traveling. Ar-rahla, a journey.
Ar-rihlat. Yeah.
Ar-rihla. Okay, I'm just confused because of the font. Al-murasalah, in today's terms, messaging.
Yeah, here it's referring to what he mentioned, correspondence or writing letters. Carry on.
Yeah. Mufid, beneficial.
طيب, أحسنت. Let's see who can answer. Where we've got only got 4 of you. 1, 2, 3, 4. Huh? طيب, Sheikh Ibrahim, let's try. كم هواية لشريف? Tell me, what's the question asking you?
Is asking
Kam. So generally kam is always asking about a number. It's like how much or how many. So kam hiwayatan li Sharif. How many hobbies does Sharif have? Babe, how many does he have? Come here.
how many
You could just say what he said. Hiwayatuhu kathira. He has a lot, and he's mentioned 3.
Hiwayati
Hiwayati, you're speaking about myself. My. Hiwayatuhu, which means his hobbies, are a lot. Try again. Hiwayatuhu.
Hiwayatuhu kathira.
Ahsan. Okay. Umar from India, ma hiwayatuhu. So ma is also a questioning word. They're asking what. So what are his hobbies? Umar. طيب على مغير ما هواياته؟
القراءة والسفر والمراسلة.
سفر
والسفر والمراسلة.
أحسنت, well done. طيب كم هواية لشاكر؟ نعيم.
هوايته 3.
كم هواية لشاكر؟ ايشو؟ شاكر الرياضة والرحلات والقراءة أيضا. That's all to do with that. طيب ماشي. أحسنت. ما هواياته؟ نعيم.
الرياضة والرحلة والقراءة أيضا.
والرحلات. الرياضة والرحلات والقراءة أيضا. أحسنت. من يقرأ المجلات العلمية؟ إبراهيم. Saying who reads these magazines. علمية is like more academic. Man, so they're asking who. So you've got to go back to the name and see who's doing that. مجلات علمية. Let's see.
Sharif. No, Shakir.
أحسنت. No, wait. شريف ولا لا؟ أقرأ الكتب الإسلامية والمجلات العلمية. طيب. من يقرأ المجلات الإسلامية؟ عالم غير.
شاكر يقرأ المجلات الإسلامية.
طيب وشريف ماذا يقرأ يعني؟
شريف يقرأ المجلات العلمية.
ويقرأ الكتب الإسلامية. طيب أحسنت ماشي. من لديه مكتبة كبيرة؟ عمر. Man means who. So who has a big library? شريف أحسن. لديه مكتبة كبيرة. من يقرأ 4 ساعات في اليوم? Who reads 4 hours a day? إبراهيم.
Sharif. No, yeah. Sharif is the yellow.
He says that. Sharif says. شاكر says أنا أقرأ 4 ساعات في اليوم. 4. طيب من يقرأ 3 ساعات في اليوم؟ عالم غير. It's good, you must try.
شريف يقرأ 3 ساعات في اليوم.
طيب نعيم، ما الهواية التي يحبها الاثنان؟
What hobbies?
Do both of them like?
Yeah, قراءة. It is it? القراءة
Anything
والسفر.
else?
والسفر.
Where's safar for both of them?
قراءة سفر ورياضة. Wait 1 second. رحلة. Sorry. رحلة.
That's if you're counting rihla and safar as one and the same thing. Okay. طيب inshallah we'll stop here. We'll stop here because tomorrow is a different exercise and we read through it. Remember, as we're going through these, you'll find that they're much longer than book 1. طيب Naeem, what's your question?
Sheikh, what does mursalat mean again?
مراسلة, not مرسلات. مرسلة the surah والمرسلات عرفا. Huh?
Yeah, that's what. Okay, I was getting confused. Okay, that's fine.
This is murasalat, and you learn from the different af'al that there's certain af'al, certain verbs that are speaking with regards to one person doing it, and certain af'al are speaking about 2 people doing it. So murasala has to occur between 2 people because of how the wazn is. Anything else? Naeem, your hand is still up. Naeem?
Sheikh, no.
Yeah, nothing. Okay. طيب, inshallah today I want to end off with Ad-Da' wa Dawa. Ibn al-Qayyim in a long chapter or long fasl, he's speaking about some of the harms and the evils of sin. And so I've literally broken down this chapter and I'm just trying to take small parts or small ahadith that he mentions. He mentions many different ahadith. Today I want to mention 2 hadith that he spoke about, and it's regarding some of the signs at the end of time, and more specifically with regards to those who are counted as people of knowledge. It's mentioned that it's mentioned. So you must remember when speaking about a hadith, this he doesn't mention, but I'm just telling you. When somebody says, for example, it's recorded in Sahih al-Bukhari, for example, it's recorded in Sahih Muslim, روى الإمام مسلم, روى الإمام أحمد, روى الإمام البخاري, for example, that is generally speaking about something that's authentic. Then at times they say وَرُوِيَ. Ruwiya is mabni lil majhul, for those who know. So this majhul, it says it was narrated, it's mentioned, and generally when they use that sighah or that method in hadith, they're generally referring to something that's not as strong. Anyway, so he says that it's mentioned in a hadith that towards the end of time, towards the end of time, nothing will remain from Islam except its name. And you'll find the masajid, they will be big and beautiful, etc. You have state-of-the-art masajid. However, the people in those masajid, they won't have, their hearts won't be filled with iman. And you'll find that the worst people at the time will be those who call themselves ulama, or those who are regarded as ulama. And in another hadith, it's mentioned that towards the end of time, you'll find that there'll be people who will come out all claiming to have knowledge, but nobody will practice upon that knowledge. And you'll find people coming out all claiming, or it will be apparent that they love one another, but they've actually got hatred towards one another in their hearts. And then he mentions some of the punishments that are spoken about this. And some of the punishments mentioned is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would take away the barakah of the people, would also punish them when it comes to they themselves, either having an external force take over or trouble them, etc. Also have problems amongst themselves. What's important to mention, and this is for all of us, is that any beneficial knowledge you learn, practice upon it, because at the end of the day, this is not something where, yes, it's important to enjoy knowledge, but it's not something you're just coming to learn for the sake of learning or for the sake of gathering new pieces of benefit. No, it's not only that. Yes, you come to learn something new, but you've got to practice upon what you learn. That's why the main thing when it comes to learning is to practice and then teach others. And that's why, again, it's mentioned in a saying. Some people say it's a hadith, but Allah knows best. It's mentioned that whoever practices upon man amila bima alima, whoever practices upon the knowledge that they learned or they have, awrathahu Allahu ilma ma lam ya'lam. Allah grants him new knowledge that he didn't know. So for all of us as students of knowledge, you learn something new. For example, you learn the benefit of Salatul Duha. Example, the day you remember, or you get into a habit of reading the Salatul Duha, which is 2 voluntary units of prayer, roughly about 15 minutes after the sun has risen. The time starts there right up to about 20 minutes before Zawal, before Zawal. You learned about it, its benefits, you learned the hadith where the Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says that every time a person wakes up, upon every single limb of his is a sadaqah. So you should give a sadaqah for every single limb. How many 100 limbs we have? I think the hadith, it mentions 300 odd. Then he says at the end of that hadith, and it will suffice if he read the units of prayer, i.e. the duha prayer. So you learn about that, you hear that, practice upon it. And even if you start off by trying to practice upon these things once, twice, etc., especially your sunan, you'll see barakah in your knowledge, barakah in your time, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant you. Those few words, we ask Allah to grant us goodness and beneficial knowledge. Inshallah, we'll see you guys tomorrow. Any questions before we go? Omar?
Can you please explain the concept of Mabni lil Majnoon again? I just forgot.
Okay, in short, you see, we need to go through it, but in short, if you've got what's ma'loom is something that's known. So you say daraba zaydun. Daraba is the fi'l, the verb. Zaydun is fa'il, the one carrying out that verb. Zayd hit who? Daraba zaydun amran. Zayd hit Amr. Right. Now, majhul is where somebody is hidden, and generally they hide the fa'il. So they hide the doer of the action. So instead of saying daraba zaydun, you'll say, instead of saying daraba zaydun amran, you'll say duriba amrun. And it's a whole different
Duriba.
Duriba. Majhul, duriba. And then amrun, you won't say مفعول به, you'll say نائب فاعل. So it's taken the place of fa'il. So here you don't say Zaid hit Amr, you say Amr was hit. Hit by who? You don't know. This we all take it in Nahu, inshallah.
Meaning in the passive voice.
Meaning in the?
Passive voice. Passive.
I'm not quite getting you, but
Meaning like active voice, passive voice.
what's your
Something like that.
definition of active and passive voice? I'm more of a speaker, and I read those definitions from the speaking terms. But anyway, I'm sure you get what I mean, and inshallah we have to take all this in detail. طيب. Anything else? Nobody else? Yallah. See you guys tomorrow. Hopefully by next week we'll have your level 2 class ready, and maybe we'll have tafsir on some days and something else on other days. This is also inshallah, if you guys are able to remain for all the lessons and for a while, you'll benefit. But in case you're unable to, at least you remember, hey, one day I took some abwab in fiqh, as well as a little bit of Arabic, as well as a little bit of usul al-fiqh, and as well as a little bit of nahu, and maybe you might become busier, you might go to the university, but 5 years later, at least you would have those keys and exposure to these subjects. And inshallah, you'll always find those recordings online as long as we're living, and there's still YouTube. Yallah. Arakum ala khair fi amanillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam. But is the recording finished? Oh.
I'll switch off my recording now. 1 second.